Gary Sinise was at the peak of a career that many actors spend a lifetime chasing. He had earned respect in Hollywood, built an unforgettable list of roles, and inspired millions through his performances. Then, almost without warning, he disappeared from the spotlight. Fans wondered what had happened. Why would someone walk away from fame when everything seemed to be going so well? For years, Gary barely spoke about it. Only after the heartbreaking loss of his son did the full story finally come to light. And what was happening behind the scenes was far more emotional than anyone imagined. Most actors leave their characters behind when filming ends. They move on to the next project, the next paycheck, the next role. Gary Sinise did something very different. One fictional character changed the course of his entire life. The man the world knew as Lieutenant Dan became much more than a movie role. It became a lifelong mission. But how did one film lead him down such an unexpected path? Long before Hollywood came calling, Gary was a young man growing up in Chicago with a passion for theater. In the mid-1970s, he helped create the Steppenwolf Theater Company with his close friend John Malkovich. They started with almost nothing, performing in a church basement fueled by determination and love for acting. Gary worked tirelessly as both an actor and director, slowly earning a reputation for talent and dedication. That hard work eventually opened the doors to Hollywood, where bigger opportunities finally arrived. But nothing would shape his future more than a single role in 1994. That year, Gary starred in Forrest Gump as Lieutenant Dan Taylor, a Vietnam veteran who had lost both his legs and his desire to live. Preparing for the role meant much more than memorizing lines. Gary spent weeks meeting wounded veterans, listening to their stories, hearing about their struggles, and learning how deeply many of them felt forgotten after serving their country. Those conversations changed him forever. Even after filming wrapped, he couldn't simply move on. Something had shifted inside him. And that change would soon become impossible to ignore. As Forrest Gump became a worldwide success, veterans began recognizing Gary everywhere. Many didn't call him Gary. They called him Lieutenant Dan. Instead of distancing himself from the character, he embraced it. He realized that the attention surrounding the role could become a powerful tool to help real people. But acting alone wasn't enough. He wanted to do something meaningful. In 2003, Gary helped create the Lieutenant Dan Band. Rather than performing for sold-out arenas, the band traveled to military bases around the world. Their mission was simple. Bring music, laughter, and appreciation to the men and women serving far from home. The concerts lifted spirits, but Gary soon realized they were only temporary moments of encouragement. He wanted to build something that would last much longer. And that's when an even bigger idea began to take shape. In 2011, he launched the Gary Sinise Foundation. The organization focused on supporting wounded veterans, first responders, and their families. One of its most remarkable programs built mortgage-free smart homes for severely injured service members. These homes included features designed to restore independence, from wider doorways to accessible kitchens and easy-to-use technology. For countless families, those houses represented more than shelter. They represented dignity, hope, and a fresh start. But while Gary devoted himself to protecting others, trouble was quietly entering his own home. What happened next would change everything. By the summer of 2018, life appeared busy and successful from the outside. Gary balanced charity work, concerts, and acting while continuing to expand his foundation. Few people knew that behind closed doors, his family was about to face an unimaginable storm. In June, his wife of nearly 40 years, Moira Harris, received devastating news. She had stage 3 breast cancer. Treatment began immediately. Surgery. Chemotherapy. Radiation. Every day became a fight. Gary focused on keeping the family together while watching the woman he loved endure exhausting treatments. It was heartbreaking. Yet even as they tried to adjust, another tragedy was waiting just around the corner. And this second blow would be even harder to bear. Only weeks later, their 27-year-old son, McKenna, known to everyone as Mac, visited a doctor because of pain near his tailbone. The diagnosis stunned the family. Mac had chordoma, an incredibly rare form of bone cancer that develops in the spine. It affects only a few hundred Americans each year, and there is still no known cure. In one terrible summer, Gary suddenly found himself caring for both his wife and his son as they battled cancer at the same time. How could any family possibly prepare for something like that? The Sinise home became a place filled with hospital visits, medication schedules, medical appointments, and constant uncertainty. Gary and his daughters worked around the clock to support both patients. Every day demanded strength. Every night brought fresh worries. Eventually, there was one piece of encouraging news. Moira completed treatment, and her cancer entered remission. It felt like a victory they desperately needed. But that relief didn't last long. Follow-up scans revealed that Mac's cancer had spread. What they feared most was becoming reality. Mac underwent major spinal surgery in September 2018. For a brief moment, there was hope. Then infections led to another surgery only months later. Soon after that, new scans showed the cancer had returned once again. More surgery followed. Each operation grew more difficult than the last. The tumors pressed against his spinal cord until he eventually became paralyzed from the chest down. His independence slowly disappeared. But what happened inside his heart was something entirely different. Music had always been Mac's greatest passion. He had played drums since childhood and even performed with the Lieutenant Dan band beside his father. Losing control of his body could have crushed his spirit. Instead, he adapted. He continued working for the Gary Sinise Foundation, helping with education and outreach while supporting new projects. He also leaned deeply on his Catholic faith, finding peace even during unimaginable suffering. Rather than asking others to comfort him, he often found himself encouraging those around him. How was he able to stay so strong when everything seemed to be slipping away? As Mac's condition worsened, Gary faced a choice no parent ever wants to make. Hollywood continued offering opportunities. His career was still thriving. But home needed him more than any movie set ever could. In 2020, after finishing his final film projects, Gary quietly stepped away from acting. There were no dramatic announcements or farewell interviews. He simply stopped accepting roles. Fame no longer mattered. Awards no longer mattered. His family needed him, and that was enough. Gary later described his new role as becoming the family's air traffic controller. Every day brought medical reports, specialist appointments, treatment plans, and endless decisions. He organized the chaos so his son could focus on simply getting through another day. The workload never seemed to end. Yet even that wasn't the full picture. During the same period, Gary's elderly father suffered a serious stroke. His mother suddenly needed care as well. Almost overnight, Gary found himself supporting 3 generations of his family all at once. Children, parents, wife, son. Every direction pulled at him. Walking away from Hollywood wasn't sacrifice in his eyes. It was simply what family required. In 2021, the Sinise family relocated from California to Nashville, Tennessee. The move brought them closer to supportive friends, a quieter lifestyle, and a community that embraced the foundation's mission. For more than 5 years, they fought together as a family. But eventually, even the strongest determination reaches its limits. On January 5, 2024, after years of surgeries and relentless treatments, Mac passed away peacefully at 33 years old. His family surrounded him during his final moments. The battle was over. While the grief was overwhelming, there was comfort in knowing his suffering had finally ended. Still, losing a child leaves a wound unlike any other. And Gary wasn't ready to face the public just yet. The family held a private Catholic funeral later that month, choosing to grieve quietly. Gary kept the news from the public for nearly 2 months, protecting his family from media attention while they processed their unimaginable loss. Then, on February 27, he shared an emotional tribute through the Gary Sinise Foundation. In his message, Gary compared Mac to the soldier in the closing moments of the film 1917, running forward despite explosions all around him, constantly knocked down but refusing to stay there. The response was immediate. Veterans, first responders, supporters, and ordinary people flooded the family with messages of love. For decades Gary had comforted grieving military families. Now, those same people were comforting him. Life had come full circle. But Mac had left behind one final gift that would continue touching lives. Long before cancer entered his life, Mac had dreamed of creating music. Even after losing the ability to play drums and piano, he refused to stop composing. He taught himself harmonica. He used technology to write orchestral arrangements one note at a time. He recorded voice memos and worked alongside producer Oliver Schnee and close friends to complete his music. Just before his passing, Mac finished his first album, Resurrection and Revival. Later, while going through his files, Gary discovered many unfinished songs, including one called Angel's Theme. Rather than leaving those ideas behind, Gary gathered musicians, classmates, and friends to complete the work exactly as Mac had hoped. The second collection, Resurrection and Revival, Part 2, was released on what would have been Mac's 34th birthday. Every dollar from the album supports the Gary Sinise Foundation, allowing Mac's passion to continue helping wounded veterans and first responders long after his passing. Isn't that the kind of legacy most people only dream about? Today, Gary lives a quieter life in Tennessee, surrounded by family instead of movie sets. He spends time with Moira, his daughters Sophie and Ella, and his grandchildren. The red carpets are gone, replaced by peaceful moments at home. Yet his mission has only grown stronger. His work with veterans now carries an even deeper understanding. When he meets Gold Star families who have lost loved ones, he no longer speaks only from compassion. He speaks from experience. He knows the silence that follows unimaginable loss. He understands the pain words cannot describe. That shared understanding has given his mission an entirely new meaning. Gary still performs with the Lieutenant Dan Band, bringing music to military communities across the world. Every beat of the drums reminds him of the son who once played beside him. Through every concert, every home built, every family helped, Mac's spirit continues moving forward. Gary Sinise's story isn't really about Hollywood. It isn't about awards or fame. It's about choosing love over success, family over career, and service over recognition. Life tested him in ways few people could imagine, yet he refused to let tragedy define him. Instead, he transformed heartbreak into hope for countless others. And perhaps that's the greatest performance of his life. It leaves us with one powerful question. If everything you had worked for stood on one side, and your family needed you on the other, which path would you choose?